Well, Dr. Lee, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to New Zealand. I understand it's your first time here, and it's a real pleasure for us at the American Embassy here in Wellington to have played a small part in helping to bring over one of America's leading academic experts on diversity and ethnicity in the United States and immigration. So you're the author of The Diversity Paradox and the soon-to-be released Asian American Achievement Paradox. So you're here to give a keynote address at the Population Association of New Zealand at the University of Waikato. But first, I believe it is your first time in New Zealand, and as an expert on diversity in the United States, this is something that we talk about quite a bit as diplomats in New Zealand, is that this is a value that we share, a recognition that diversity is our strength. And what are your impressions of New Zealand?
I have to say, one, thank you for inviting me and for hosting me here. It is such a pleasure to be here. It's the first time I've been to New Zealand, and it is an enormous treat to be here and a privilege. And I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed by the cultural and ethnic diversity of New Zealand. I'm especially impressed with the way in which New Zealand law has thoughtfully incorporated Maori culture and language into the broader culture of New Zealanders and Kiwi, for instance, that people are able to speak in Maori and introduce talks in Maori. And what that does is give symbolic recognition to the Maori population, but also create a sense of we-ness among Kiwis, which is wonderful.
So in your books, you discuss immigration and changes in demographics in the United States, and was that something that you talked about in your keynote address as well?
I did. Actually, I think the United States is undergoing tremendous racial and ethnic diversity. About 1 in 4 Americans are immigrants or the children of immigrants, and they're largely coming from Latin America and Asia. And what it's doing is creating a new type of diversity, a new type of racial and ethnic diversity. And so whereas the United States used to be largely a black-white society, as a result of changes in immigration law, we now see a kaleidoscope of racial and ethnic groups. And it's not only produced more diversity, but it's produced more interracial marriage, a larger and more visible multiracial population. And what we're finding is that in areas, in states and metropolitan areas that are more diverse, you're seeing more mixing, more intermarriage, more multiracial Americans popping up. So I think some people fear diversity, that it will lead to harder divisions. What we're finding is the opposite, that diversity is actually helping to break down color lines.
So a lot of people have been commenting in the United States about the changing face of America and demographic trends. Where do you think that's leading us as a country?
It's really exciting, I think, because the United States used to be a largely black-white society, and with immigration from Latin America and Asia, with increasing intermarriage, with a growing and visible multiracial population, the face of America is changing. And so we're in about 2050, demographers estimate that about 20% of the US population could be multiracial. In 2100, about 1 in 3 Americans could be multiracial. So it's exciting to think about what Americans might look like in the future. It's exciting to think that the kind of boundaries that have long divided Americans could be breaking down as a result of increased diversity.
That if a young person is planning on preparing for a more interconnected world of the future and a more diverse world, there's no better place to do that than on American campuses. Why should a young person maybe watching this consider studying at the University of California, Irvine, Europe?
That's an excellent question, other than the fact that I'm there. No, I would say that Irvine is a really exciting place. One, because it's very young, it's under 50 years old, yet over the past few years it's been ranked the #1 university under 50. So it tells you something about the dynamism of the faculty and the students. It's a diverse student body. It also is a student body in which about 40% of the students are first-generation college students, and it tells you something about the grit of those students. And so, given the increasing trends in globalization, given that students are going to have to learn to work together and learn from each other based on the diversity, I think it's a terrific place for a young New Zealander to get an education.
The theme of our 4th of July celebration that we had last night here in Wellington was the power of sports to bring communities together, and how sports can sort of be a mirror of opportunity for the full spectrum of our societies. And nowhere is that more clear than here in New Zealand, where Maori and Pacifica communities contribute to rugby, most notably, and perhaps not the most diverse finals in rugby, where two New Zealand teams are playing each other. But just wondered if you could talk a little bit about sports and diversity in America.
You know what, I'm really glad you asked that question, because when Ambassador Gilbert spoke about diversity in sports and how sports has allowed groups to come together on an equal playing field, and that it has helped break down racial boundaries, I thought that was really apropos. And because it tells us who we are as Americans, that we're willing to traverse boundaries for a greater good. And so it's really exciting to be here in Wellington, almost on the eve of the finals, actually, of the rugby championships. And I can't help but say, since I'm here in Wellington, I am rooting for the Hurricanes, and I hope they win, but I would be delighted to see a terrific match. Thank you very much for hosting me, for inviting me, and I will definitely be back, both for research and for fun, and hopefully bring my husband, who's jealous and envious, as I send all the pictures back to him.
Excellent. Thank you again.